the incarnation of Aristotle's spirit in Shakespeare's works. Can we speak of incarnation, of the transfer of a Greek philosopher's soul into the body of an English playwright who had almost certainly never read his poetics? The answer is yes, but not in the simple way literature textbooks often claim. The relationship between Shakespeare and Aristotle is not one of conscious study or imitation. It is one of structural affinity and instinctive recreation. As if Aristotle's spirit, without Shakespeare even knowing his name, sat in the back room of the Globe Theatre and guided the movement of his quill. But how could such an incarnation happen? The answer lies in a tradition that carried Aristotle from the 4th century BCE all the way to Elizabethan London. Roman tragedy, Seneca, Italian Renaissance commentaries, and university-trained playwrights like Marlowe. Shakespeare swam in this river and, without realizing it, absorbed the deeper Aristotelian rules. Let us look at some of these signs of incarnation. 1. The law of tragic flaw, where virtue turns into fall. Aristotle insisted in the Poetics that the tragic hero should be neither perfectly good nor thoroughly evil, but a person like you and me, who makes a critical error, usually born of ignorance or haste, that leads to destruction. Shakespeare implements this concept so precisely that one might think he had the Poetics under his pillow. Hamlet, a prince whose business is analysis, not action. His procrastination, rooted in deep melancholy and philosophical skepticism, is exactly the flaw that gives Claudius the upper hand and sacrifices everyone. Macbeth, a brave general whose ambition exceeds its bounds and drives him to murder. Othello, who nurtures jealousy like a dragon in his chest and smothers an innocent woman. In all these cases, their virtue is their very flaw: Macbeth's courage, Othello's intense love, Hamlet's depth of thought. Aristotle had said that hamartia is not a moral vice, but a tragic mistake that springs from the heart of excellence. Shakespeare brings this to the stage in the most intimate way possible. 2. Recognition in the darkest hour. One of Aristotle's most astonishing concepts is anagnorisis, the moment when the hero suddenly sees the truth, a truth that, if seen earlier, would have prevented the disaster. But tragedy always comes late. Shakespeare crafts these moments so skillfully that the audience is lifted from their seats. The moment when Othello, after smothering Desdemona, hears from Emilia that Iago stole the handkerchief. Suddenly, everything collapses. "Oh, I am a foolish murderer!" But too late. Or in King Lear, when the mad Lear holds the dead Cordelia in his arms and says, "A dog, a horse, a rat have life, and thou no breath." In that moment, he has recognized not only his daughter, but also the simple, bitter truth about flattery and ingratitude. This is precisely that recognition combined with reversal of fortune, which Aristotle called the beating heart of every tragedy. 3. Cosmic order, when a personal flaw unmakes the world. Aristotle, contrary to popular impression, was not only thinking about dramatic structure. In the background lay a worldview. The universe is orderly, and every transgression of limit meets an equal response. Shakespeare makes this ethical cosmic order astonishingly tangible. When Macbeth kills the king, he can no longer sleep, and his hands never become clean. When Lear divides his kingdom between two flattering daughters and banishes Cordelia, nature itself raises a storm and leaves him naked and mad on the heath. In Hamlet, after the killing of Polonius, everything at Elsinore loses its natural rhythm. Ophelia goes mad and drowns. The queen is poisoned. Laertes and Hamlet both wounded. Shakespeare's world, like Aristotle's, is a living organism that falls ill and collapses when its inner law is violated. Catharsis, why we feel lighter after watching Hamlet. Aristotle gave the most famous concept of all a name, catharsis, or purification. The purpose of tragedy, he said, is to arouse pity and fear and then to drain them away. Without ever having heard the word, Shakespeare achieves this goal to the highest degree. Why, after watching the final scene of Macbeth with his severed head on a pole, do we not feel disgust, but rather a strange lightness? Because the fear of unbridled ambition and the pity for a man who became his own willing victim have been cleansed within us. Why, when Othello stabs himself over Desdemona's body, do we weep yet do not leave the theater? Because we have experienced and released the jealousy we have suppressed in ourselves, all in the safe form of an audience. Shakespeare, without reading the Poetics, became a therapist for the collective psyche, exactly the role Aristotle had assigned to theater. Conclusion: Incarnation as resonance, not imitation. So, the incarnation of Aristotle's spirit in Shakespeare's works does not mean that Shakespeare read the Poetics and followed it line by line. That would be naive. Incarnation means that these two geniuses, separated by 2,000 years and without direct contact, arrived at the same fundamental laws concerning human suffering, error, and purification. Aristotle formulated these laws as a philosopher, Shakespeare as a practical playwright working in the theaters of London. But the result is the same, an admission that human beings, in their greatest moments just before the fall, most resemble the gods, and in that same moment, because of that small flaw, descend into the deepest earth. Aristotle's spirit lives in Shakespeare's plays not as a long-bearded Greek ghost, but as a hidden structure. In the way the hero is introduced, in the moment of recognition, in the unmaking of the world's order, and finally, in that heavy silence that fills the theater after the death of the protagonist, a silence that cleanses the audience's breath. That is catharsis. That is Aristotle's spirit, incarnated in words born in London, but with roots reaching back to Athens.